Hello, and welcome to the Diving Deeper into Camtasia webinar. My name is Ryan Bort. I'm the Brand Experience Coordinator here at TechSmith, and I will be the host today. Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to cover a little bit deeper features into Camtasia, from preparing for a recording. We'll talk about using a timeline effectively and even incorporating your webcam, and we'll talk about making some of your own assets like titles and intros. For today's webinar, we'll be using Camtasia 2019 on a PC, but if you have an older version or you're on a Mac, that's okay. Most of what we cover will still apply to you. Following that 45-minute presentation, as with all of our webinars, we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for some questions and answering sessions. Before we jump into all of that though, I do want to take care of some housekeeping items. Now that we've got that out of the way, let me introduce you all to Jason Vlad, who's going to be taking us through Camtasia today. Jason, hello.
Hey, Ryan, and thanks to everyone for joining us for this very first Diving Deeper into Camtasia webinar. Really looking forward to it.
Jason is a ATD credentialed master trainer. A big part of his job has been training others and teaching them how to use both Camtasia and Snagit. So he is the perfect person to lead this webinar today. So Jason, with that introduction, I'll let you take over.
Thanks, Ryan, and once again, thanks everybody for joining us. Be sure you take advantage of the fact that we have people live and ready to answer questions by using that questions pane. I'd like to start off with a very quick poll. This is an interactive poll. Now let's get ourselves into Camtasia. So before I launch Camtasia, the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of project preparation. This is just my desktop here. It's set up with a 1920 by 1080 dimension, so it's a 1080p dimension screen. I love to show it that this is how I set myself up. You'll also notice that for me recording, I have nothing on my desktop. Well, nothing you can see. See, there's a trick that you can use if you're not aware of it. If you right click on your screen, if you have icons all over your screen, and you go to View, Show Desktop Icons, I actually have a ton of stuff sitting here on my desktop. Many different programs and shortcuts and stuff, but I don't want people worrying about what is this Adobe thing or Skype. Yay, Skype. So one cool thing to do is to hide your desktop icons before you do your screen recording. And that's done by right-clicking on your Windows desktop, choosing View, and deselecting Show Desktop Icons. Keeps it nice and clean for you. Another thing, of course, is if you're going to be recording audio like I'm doing today, you want to be in as quiet of an environment as you can. I always put a sign on my door that says, hey, I'm recording, please don't come in and bother me. I make sure that all my programs that do some sort of notification noise, usually email and chat bots and anything like that, that are turned off. And I always try and make sure I have a USB-based microphone because that's going to give me the best quality sound that I have, definitely over any kind of built-in microphone. And it doesn't matter if you're using a $30 one or a $300 one. A USB microphone is going to give you a better result every single time. So let's launch Camtasia here real quick, and we're going to walk through a couple things before we get our project started. And today we're going to be recording a real simple recording of a website, of the TechSmith website. But the difference between this and previous webinars is we're going to actually record our webcam as well. And we're going to utilize that recording and the webcam to show you a couple different feature sets in Camtasia and how to manage your timelines, how to manage pieces of media. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new recording. And so actually we'll start in with a new project, which always comes in as an untitled project. And first thing I always do is I save my project by going to File, Save, and we'll actually save this to our desktop today. And I have gotten in the habit, thanks to another coworker, of creating a folder every time I create a new project. So in this case, we'll call this Camtasia Diving Deeper. And then what I do is once I have a folder created, all the associated project files I save with the exact same name. That way I can locate them later on if they happen to get separated or I move things around. I know that these two particular projects go together. So when I hit save, our project now is Camtasia Diving Deeper, and it also tells me that, hey, you've created a TSC proj file, which only can be opened with Camtasia. So we're going to do a screen recording, like I said, with our webcam. So I'm going to click on the record button up here, which is going to hide my editor. And it's going to bring up our recorder interface. So if you've been with us for previous webinars, you know my mantra is to record, edit, and produce all at the same dimensions, and that you want to answer 3 questions to get yourself set up. What do you want people to be able to see? Can they see you? And can they hear you? And we're going to step through all those right now, but I'm going to show you a couple of tips first. First things first, I'm not going to do a full screen recording today. I'm actually going to bring up a web page, which is just the techsmith.com web page right here, because we're going to show people how to find our tutorials. So instead of full screen, I'm actually going to go into the custom recording options, and I'm going to choose an option that says lock to application. And when I click on that, and then click on the next application that I'm going to use, which is this web window, you can see that as I move it around, the recorder itself moves around as well. So it always follows just that piece of media. So even if I had not cleaned up my desktop, if I chose this option, I know that this is the only thing that would be captured. However, that also means if I bring anything else into the recording, that only this screen is going to be captured. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to change the application sizing. So I know my screen is set to 1080p. I always recommend recording at the highest possible resolution you have available to you. Why? Well, because if you scale a video down or use Camtasia to perhaps zoom in or pan around on the screen to get better detail, having more pixels or greater resolution is always going to be beneficial to you. So in this case, I'm going to set it at 1080p. It snaps the window to that full screen as well as the recording window so that it's matched. That means that everything on my screen is going to be captured. The one disadvantage for doing the webinar this way is it's always still going to capture what you guys can't see right now, the webinar software, but we won't worry about that per se. Okay, so we answered the first question, what do I want people to be able to see? The second question is, do I want them to see me? And the answer is yes. Hi, I'm Jason. I'm the one running your webinar today. So I'm actually going to enable my webcam, but there's something I want you to note. By default, Windows sets your camera dimensions to 4 by 3 here. And we already set our desktop resolution to 16 by 9 at 1080p. So we're going to actually have to make a small adjustment to our camera, which can be done right here in the Camtasia recorder window. That is done by clicking the drop-down arrow here, making sure we choose the right camera for our application, because I have a couple of cameras plugged in. And then I'm going to choose options, which brings up this, the tool options for my camera. What I'm going to do is choose this button right here. This is the format settings button. And when I click on that, it gives me the option to change a few things about my camera. Now, Microsoft and Windows doesn't allow my camera to go much higher than the 1080p or 720 that's available. If I choose 1080p, which is the default setting, and I choose apply, you will see that the camera itself is going to change its resolution and its shape from this 4:3 option to a widescreen, a 16 by 9. And it's a little pixelated, so it doesn't make me really happy. So what I'm going to recommend is instead of that 1080p for the webcam, I'm going to choose 1280 by 720. It's slightly less resolution, but it's going to be that same format, that same 69 by format. And it's going to be important for that when we click OK. And you'll see why here in just a couple minutes when I bring the recording into the editor and we make a few adjustments. So what do I want people to be able to see? That's been captured. Camera is all set to go. And now I just want to double check my audio. I'm going to make sure that the microphone that I want to choose is being selected, which is this one, this AT2020. And I'm going to make sure that my audio is being picked up, which it is. And maybe I'm going to bump up the volume here just a little bit. So one of the things you want to note is when you're recording audio, you want to make sure you're staying here in this green range of colors. If it goes a little bit higher up into the yellow, that's not too bad. But if you get too loud and it spikes up there into the orange and red, that's a little bit harder to deal with, because you always want to feed the best possible audio, same with the best possible video, into Camtasia, because we can do some things with it, but we can't fix everything. In fact, no video editor can. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to do our recording. And what I'm going to do is record a simple recording of how to find the tutorials on the TechSmith website. But I'm going to keep in mind that I'm being recording my camera, so I'm not just going to stare at my screen. I'm going to also address the camera while I'm doing some movements. When I hit the red record button, excuse me, I'm going to get a 3, 2, 1 countdown. Then the recorder is going to shrink away, and everything I do and say from that point on is going to be captured by Camtasia. So when I'm recording with my webcam, one of the things I do is I pause an extra second or two in my brain before I begin speaking. This gives me a nice little gap at the beginning if I want to add a transition, perhaps fading in and making it look a little bit more polished. But it also gives the computer a second to turn on all the camera, turn on all the mics, and make sure everything's ready to go. This shouldn't take more than a minute or so, so let's do this sample recording. Hi, this is Jason with TechSmith. I'd love to show you how easy it is to find the tutorials on the TechSmith website. First, you want to go to techsmith.com in your favorite web browser. At the top of the screen, you want to locate the support menu and then click on Tutorials. Here you're going to be brought to the training and tutorials page where you're going to find all the products that TechSmith, Here you're going to be brought to the tutorials. Wow, sorry everybody. I'm just stumbling over my words. Good thing Camtasia is an editor. Here you'll be brought to the tutorials and training page, and you'll find all the software that TechSmith makes listed. Today we want to learn more about Camtasia, so let's click on Camtasia. This is the Camtasia tutorials page. At the top, you'll find a 5-video selection called Learn the Basics. In under 20 minutes, you'll be able to watch these 5 videos and get a basic understanding of how Camtasia works and how you can apply it to your projects. When you're ready, or you want to up your skill set, return to this page and scroll down to the All Tutorials section, and you can find more in-depth videos specific to topics and different properties and tools within Camtasia. I hope you found this very useful, and thanks for watching. Then I'm going to hit F10, which is my keyboard shortcut to stop the recording. And what happens is the editor opens up and it drops in my recording. And what you'll notice if this is the first time you've done this is not only does it bring in one recording, which is the TREC file up here in the media bin, but it also brings in a second track, which is my camera recording. Also, it adds in my spoken word, and that's video and audio is embedded together here in track 2. Okay. The audio is linked to the webcam because it's synchronized that way, so that my mouth and what you hear from your speakers or your headphones are in sync, so nothing looks disjointed. Okay. What I want to show you is here on the tracks, like we said, there's 2 tracks. There's this one, which is the screen recording, and then the second one, which is me. And since I'm recorded as a webcam, this is a separate piece of media. That means this piece of media can be independently adjusted. So I'm going to move my webcam, and the reason we made it 16:9 is so that I can make it full screen and have it look really, really clean on the recording, as opposed to if I had left it at 4:3, there would have been space over here on the left and the right, which would have bled through to my previous recording. So this is an opportunity to talk about something called the Z order of media. That's Z as in zebra. And that is simply this. If I resize this recording down here just a little bit, you'll see that my webcam is in front of my screen recording. In the same way, the track that contains my webcam is above my screen recording. If I happen to grab the screen recording and click and drag it above my camera, the camera is still there. If in fact it's hiding behind this recording. But because of the Z order, it does not let me see what's available here. So one thing you want to note when you're creating content and when you're moving content around in the editor is to remember the Z order, that the higher the track number is, the more front facing or on top of the other media the media is going to be. So let's go ahead and move this. Like I said, we're going to resize my recording so that when the video starts, it's going to start with me in full screen. Okay. Now, before I get a little further into this, and we're going to actually animate this recording because I don't want to be full screen the whole time. I actually recorded the how-to video so you could see it and people could utilize it. But before I get into showing you how to animate this, Ryan, I just want to pop in real quick and see if there's been any questions about any of the setup or the recording process that we just showed.
Jason, not a ton of questions about that process. We do have some things coming in that you'll get to later, so we'll let that play out. But one question I do have for you is from Gerald. He asked if having a typed script is recommended.
So the question is, if you have a typed up script, is that recommended? Depends. I would say for the most part, yes, but it depends on the video. So the video that I just shot for you is one that I've made probably thousands of times. I have said it 1,000 times, but as you saw, I made some mistakes. In fact, we'll fix those mistakes here in a couple minutes. But having a script is important if you're going to be recording the audio separately. Perhaps you're going to record it without a screen recording, or perhaps you're going to record it in a separate environment or in a separate piece of software and then bring that into Camtasia. Or maybe you're the one who's making the screen recording, but someone else is going to do the voiceover. The biggest thing that a script helps you do with these videos is not only is it going to provide consistency of your message, but it's also going to kind of give you a recipe for how the screen recording should or could go. Bottom line, I think it's dependent on the video that you're making, but it never hurts to have one.
Awesome. And more questions are coming in, and I see that most of them have to do with editing, so I'll let you get to that. But just to add to what you said there, in the follow-up email to today's webinar, we are going to send a link to something called the TechSmith Academy, and that has some video best practices in there, and it's got an entire video and course on script writing, how to do it, templates that you can use as you start script writing yourself if that's the route you want to go. So when you get that follow-up email, check that out. It's a free resource that we provide at TechSmith.
It's a tremendous resource. I was part of those and I still learned a lot. So I encourage people to go. It's free. I mean, give it a shot. Absolutely. Any other questions, Ryan?
Nope, not as it pertains to what we've covered so far.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start doing some editing of this video, and we're going to edit and animate the webcam here. So if we play our video back. Hi, this is Jason with TechSmith. I'd love to show you how easy it is to find the tutorials on the TechSmith website. First, so at this point, I was talking to the camera during that entire introduction, but if we scrub just a little bit, I start to look at my screen recording or my screen. So at this point, I am no longer engaging the viewers. So at this point, it might be great to animate this screen recording somewhere else, the webcam. And we can do that a couple of different ways, but the way I find to be the best for my purposes is to use the animations tab over here on the left. And instead of using zoom and pan, I actually go over to the animations tab and use the custom animation. The custom animation is actually just a keyframe or the ability for you to tell Camtasia that you want something done with that piece of media. In this case, I'm going to click it and drag it down onto my timeline, right about where I want the animation to start. And if I use this zoom slider, I can actually zoom in a little bit on my timeline to get a better detailed view of what's happening. So the way the animations work in Camtasia is just like this. The playhead plays along. When it hits the tail of the animation, it begins. And as it goes through the body of the arrow, it's going to be the duration of how long an animation happens, slow or fast, depending on how long the animation arrow is. And when the playhead hits and goes past the playhead or the arrowhead, that's how the animation completes. All we need to do is double click on the head of the arrow and make our changes to the piece of media that we want to have done. So in this case, I think we're going to take the screen recording, my webcam, and we're going to shrink it down here into the lower right-hand corner. And then perhaps we can even use some of the tools in the properties drawer to tilt it a little bit. So if I tilt it on the y-axis a little bit, let's actually tilt it just a little bit there, and then the negative way. So it looks a little bit like it's just tilted over there in the corner, and I'm just repositioning it where I want it. Because as long as I double click the head of the animation, anything I do to it is going to tell Camtasia that's where I want the final state to be. So if we bring our playhead back and I move it slowly across that animation arrow, you'll see that it actually moves back into place. And then as it moves forward, it drops down into that position. So let's just bring back the playhead a little bit, zoom out slightly, and we'll play it from this point and see how it looks. On the TechSmith website. First, you want to go to techsmith.com in your favorite web browser. So that's not too bad. It's a little fast. Maybe I want to elongate it a little bit to slow down the total duration time or actually add to it. On the TechSmith website. First, you want to go to TechSmith. And obviously you can tweak this as much as you want. And then at a certain point, I no longer need to be on the screen. So I can still take another custom animation, drag it down here to the timeline. And I can either use the properties over here to make adjustments to it, or I can use any of the pre-built animations. In this case, I think I'm just going to have myself fade away. So I'm going to change the opacity from 100% to 0. So you can see that the image is still there. It's ghosted with these adjustment handles, but the audio is still there. So you can't see it, but the audio remains. So now it looks like I fall down into the corner and I fade away. Easy it is to find the tutorials on the TechSmith website. First, you want to go to techsmith.com in your favorite web browser. And while I'm making these adjustments to this webcam recording, I could still make adjustments to the screen recording itself. So maybe not only am I fading away into the bottom, but maybe I am changing the scale of the recording itself to go up to show the techsmith.com web address. So you can combine those two sets of animations and the two pieces of media so that it gives you a combo effect. TechSmith website. First, you want to go to techsmith.com in your favorite web browser. At the top of the screen. Okay. So and then I'd pan around and make subtle adjustments as I see fit. Okay. So what's great is we have a pretty good looking recording, other than the couple of errors that I won't worry about correcting right now, but if people are curious, we can do those a little bit later. So Ryan, don't let me forget. And I can do something as simple right now as adding transitions to the video. Perhaps I want to fade myself in, and I want to fade in the screen recording even though you can't see it, so that when it plays back. Hi, this is Jason. I could even adjust the screen recording behind it so that we don't even see it fade in because I want to be the prevalent part of the video. But what's great is the recording part is just fine, but we're at a state where I think we should have a title slide of some sort. I think we need to introduce the video a little bit better than utilizing just my screen recording. But the recording started here at the beginning, and I've already kind of got stuff timed out. I have animations. Well, let me show you a really great tip for creating some space here at the front of your video without disrupting any of the work you've already done. Here's how you do it. You're going to simply drag the playhead to where you want to create the space. In this case, it's going to be at the very beginning of the video. Hold your Shift key down on your keyboard and click and drag the playhead to the right. And as I do that, I'm creating a gap of space, but moving all the media to the right of the playhead in sync so that nothing gets out of place and it keeps all those animations and everything safe and good to go. So now what I want to do is I want to create some sort of intro slide. And I can do that either utilizing materials that I have in my library, perhaps a simple background, perhaps a piece of media that was given to me, or I can lean on the Camtasia library, including some of the pre-built free assets that come in, such as these intro slides. Like maybe I want to bring in something as simple as this state intro slide, and I can click on it, drag it down into my onto my timeline. And because it's one of our new assets, I can edit it to my heart's content right over here on the right. I can change everything from the title. So the title could be Finding Our Tutorials. And then instead of replace this text with any text, I could say Diving Deeper with Camtasia. And just by typing those in, I have now created a custom introduction. If I don't like the colors, I can change the colors. If I don't like the logo, I could change the logo. In fact, I could lean on themes as well. Like I have a Camtasia theme, and now just like that, I have colors. If you're interested in learning more about themes or the library, we did do a tutorial or a video on that, a webinar back in November, and that will come linked in the email that you receive as well. But just by simply adding in something like this, I can make the changes, I can change the titling, and it's good to go. But I don't have a lot of time, and I don't want to have to do this every single time. I don't want to have to go to the library and pull this one out and change it and change the colors. So what I can do now is I can take this changed piece of media and I can right click on it and add it to my library and put it in any folder or any library that I have created, because now with Camtasia 2019, you can actually create individual libraries. I have a library called Camtasia Deeper Dive. And instead of state, I'm going to call it Camtasia intro, because that's what it is, because I can always change the titling. I just want the colors and the logo to stay the same. So when I click OK, now I've got that Camtasia intro, and I can add it to any future project whenever I want. In fact, there's it stacked on top of each other. And I can always add other assets to it as well. For example, maybe I want to add this yellow badge to the introduction because I think it's part of a series of leveling up videos. So I can actually add this badge right in here if I wanted to, and maybe resize it. Let's add it up here in the left corner. And so this looks really good. It's ready for me to use. I have it available to me. And now, well, now I've got a intro down here, and I have a piece of media that just is not tied to that group of materials. What to do? Well, maybe I'm going to add a transition to it. We'll add a fade in and a fade out. And let's see how that plays out here where the animation starts to go away. I can actually do something called grouping. And what grouping does is it allows you to take pieces of media and apply them together and put them in groups to then save for future use. So not only is this intro already a group, which I can tell because there's a plus button here, and if I open it, there's all the different pieces inside of it that make this a beautiful moving animation. But what I can do is click and drag over those pieces of media, so the group I already have, and now this brand new badge that I want part of this introduction. And as long as those pieces of media are selected, I can right click on it and choose group, or use the hotkeys of Control G. And when I do that, I now have a brand new group which can be renamed. I can rename the group. We'll call it Camtasia intro, and I'm going to put badge on it so that I know this is a badged version of it. And then just the same as I did before, I can right click and I can add that group to my library, and it takes on the name. It goes to the same library I had it in before, but I can move it to wherever I want. And when I click OK, now I've got those two different intros, the Camtasia intro we made before, and then the badged one when it's ready to go. Great, but now I still have this gap of area between this video intro and my recording. How do I fix the gap? Just like this. I double click on the piece of media that's the most left facing of the media that I moved. In this case, it's going to be my screen, my webcam, because it's out there first. So I double click on it. That snaps the playhead to the beginning of that piece of media. I simply click or hold the shift key and click and drag the playhead back until it lines up right with that piece of media. So now when we play our video back, let's see what it looks like with the intro and the video we recorded. So this is the intro. We'll speed it up just a little bit. It fades out, and then our recording starts up. Hi, this is Jason with TechSmith. So with just a couple of seconds there, well, a couple minutes because we talked through it, we have the ability to not only make some animations to our screen, we were able to animate the screen recording, the webcam, which is the same sort of activity you'd do on any piece of media. We were also able to create a gap of space and create our own title slide. So I didn't have to rely on a PowerPoint deck or bringing in a PDF, although I could do either one of those things. I was able to lean on content that was already in Camtasia to make my intro slide, and it looks pretty good. It's got movement, it's got animation, and it's on brand with our colors, which is always really, really helpful. Now, we are at a state where this video is pretty good, other than a couple of the edits that I might want to make later on. But we have a situation that actually comes up with Ryan, something you had one of the attendees asked earlier, and that is dealing with audio. So sometimes we record video and audio at the same time like I did, but some people prefer to record separately. More control, more focus. Perhaps you've hired a professional voiceover artist to do that. So let's show what that looks like. I just saved this project, so I'm going to go up to File, New Project, which is going to give me a clean slate. And inside one of my libraries, I actually have two pieces of media. One is my screen recording that I'm going to click and add to the timeline here. This is a recording with just a sample part of what I did before. And I'm going to delete just the spoken word part because we're not going to use that. This was what we call scratch audio, just to practice. And then we are also going to ungroup this. So I have just the screen recording, which is only about 40 seconds long, 42 seconds to be exact. And I know these videos usually take a minute. How do I know? Well, I also did the voiceover for it, which is just a WAV file that I brought in from another program. In this case, I brought it in from Audition. Now, if we click on our magnifying glass here to bring the entire project into view, we will notice something. We'll notice that the voiceover is way, way longer than our screen recording. So we're going to need to utilize a few more editing tools within Camtasia to synchronize this spoken word with what's happening on the screen. Let's do that right now. First, I'm going to play back the video just for a second and play back the audio because it looks like there's a couple of seconds of silence. Hi, this is Jason with TechSmith. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the end of the media and I'm going to trim it by just dragging it over here to the right. And then we'll bring my recording back into place. I'm also going to do something as simple as adding a fade in and fade out transition to my screen recording so that we have at least a little bit of polish at the beginning. So let's watch the video and listen to the playback and find out where we become out of sync a little bit. Hi, this is Jason with TechSmith. I'd like to show you how easy it is to find the tutorials on the TechSmith website. First, go to TechSmith. So right away, I start saying first, but the screen recording, if you notice my mouse right here, is already moving up into the left-hand corner. Well, we don't want that to happen yet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on our screen recording and we're gonna rely on something called extending a frame, which can be done by placing your playhead where you want the frame extending to start, right-clicking on the media and either choosing extend frame or shift E. And what we want to figure out is about how many seconds it is between here and when I start talking about the website, the web address. So it's from 5 seconds to about 8 seconds. So that would be 3 seconds. So let's go ahead and right-click on the media, choose extend frame, and add a 3-second duration by clicking OK, which then takes my recording, steals the frame at that exact second in the video, and kind of pauses it in place. So now when I play the video back from a little bit before that, tutorials on the TechSmith website. First, go to techsmith.com in your favorite web browser. So not only was it starting to move it at that point, but now I can rely on something like my animations tool, the zoom and pan, to apply a zoom function up to that web address without having to re-record anything. I could also use something that helps me because my hand doesn't move as smoothly as I want it to when I'm screen recording, and that's going into our visual effects, cursor effects, and choosing cursor smoothing and applying that to my screen recording. Simple little thing. So we have moved up. TechSmith website. First, go to techsmith.com in your favorite web browser. At the top of the screen, locate the support menu and click on it. Then click on. Yep. So we already ran to a point where I said click on support, but then the screen started moving to tutorials before I even said anything about it. So once again, I could rely on the extend a frame and just add maybe a second or two just to fix the timing to make it a little bit cleaner. So we've added 2 seconds. And click on it. Then click on tutorials. And I could, of course, add the same sort of animations as before. Maybe instead of a zoom in, I could pan over here to have it nice and centered in the middle of the screen, and hey, I Jason, can have that happen. Yes, Ryan.
We got a couple of Mac users who notice that they don't have a zoom and pan option. For one of your zoom and pans, can you show them how they would do it on the Mac end?
Sure. Let's actually do it with this one. That's a great question, and thanks for speaking up. We appreciate that. So inside, we're going to delete this pan. Inside the animations tool in Camtasia for Mac, there is not a zoom and pan tool tab. There's only this animations tab, which has a lot of the same ones. To be honest, you could use the custom animation tool, click and drag it down onto the timeline just like before, and then when you're in here, you can utilize either the scaling or the opacity over here on the right, or as long as you've double clicked on the playhead right on the head of the animation arrow at the end, you can move the media here right on your canvas and refocus it as well. Because when I bring back my playhead over that animation, zooming in is done with the scale, and panning is just done by manually moving around the canvas. You actually have a little bit more control by doing it this way. But anytime I mention zoom or pan from here in Windows, if you want to do it with the Mac, it's just utilizing a custom animation and doing a little bit more manual movement. All right, so by using that extend a frame capability, we do have the ability to match up the screen recording with the spoken word. Support menu and click on it. Then click on Tutorials. Here you will be brought to the training and So now we've run into another situation where the screen took a little bit longer to load than the spoken word. So I could do one of a couple things. I could either select my spoken word, split it, and move it down a little bit and match it up where the screen has changed, of which I'd have to then zoom back out and give it a full screen here. Or if we undo this by clicking undo or Control or Command Z, you could rely on something else, not extending the frame, but actually using something called clip speed, which helps you speed up the screen recording a little bit. And to do that, you want to place your playhead at a position where you want the clip speed to start. You split it. You then come up here to where you want it to end, which would be about right here. Make sure the media is selected and split it again. And then you simply right click on the piece of media that you've created by splitting the front end and back end and choosing add clip speed. And the clip speed can be controlled here, right here in the piece of media, or over in your properties drawer where you can actually apply it based on how many minutes, seconds, how many frames you want it to be. In this case, the whole recording that whole section is 3 seconds. Maybe we just want to cut it in half. So I want to make it 1.5 speed. And when I do that, it shortens the clip, allows me to bring this piece of media back, and then we can check our timing by playing back the video. Then click on Tutorials. Here you will be brought to the Training and Tutorials page. Not bad. Then of course we'd bring a custom animation down here. This is just for me. Double click on the head and change the scale back to 100% of the screen. Reposition it. And now when it switches screens, it zooms back out to a full screen view. Here you will be brought to the Training and Tutorials page. So a combination of a couple things help you to synchronize your audio if you record it separately from your video. One is to have the ability to, split up the audio and move it around as needed. In fact, you could break it up into multiple pieces. You could utilize extend a frame, which is done by selecting a screen recording that you've made with Camtasia, right-clicking and choosing extend a frame or using Shift-E. You could also adjust the clip speed by creating a section of the video that you want to apply the speed to by splitting up the piece of media and applying to it directly that way. One thing I will note is when I recorded this audio, I actually was very diligent in creating these giant gaps of space. In fact, there's silence. If you play them back just on their own by using the selection tool and hitting the play button or the space bar, it'll just play that area. Total silence. Why did I do it like that? Well, one, it's a little bit cleaner and more professional in audio, but two, I can now very easily use the S tool, the split tool, and break up this media into different little parts of spoken word so that I can apply it wherever I need depending on my recording. So Ryan, we're at a point where I've covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about in this particular diving deeper session, but I'd love to find out, have there been any questions that have come in or any little tips or tricks that people would like to know about based on some of the things we've shown so far?
Yeah, absolutely. They've been coming in and our team's been answering them pretty quickly. So first one, I'll start you off with an easy one. Jeremy, noticing on your screen, you have a green bar in your audio. What is that?
Yep, so when you select a piece of media on your timeline that has audio associated with it, so if I click on this piece of media, this green bar is actually the volume level, and I can click it up and down to adjust the volume specific to the entire piece of media. If I have a section selected with the selection tool, perhaps just like this section here, I can affect just the volume of that section. So if there's a point in the video or in your recording where you spoke a little quieter, or maybe you moved a little bit farther away from the mic, any different thing like that, you can make small, subtle adjustments to your recording based on the selection and using that green bar. So you can make it for the whole piece of media by not selecting anything but the whole piece of media. You can make a change to it by using the selection tool and just grabbing the green bar from inside that selection area. Or if you want a little bit more control, you can actually right click on the green bar itself or double click on it to create little audio points. And within the audio points, you can make small adjustments, or perhaps you want to fade a noise in or fade a noise out. It allows you to make nice little adjustments. And this is where I would adjust like the track height to get really, really surgical is the way I always say it, where you can really drill right into frame by frame sounds. This is how I get rid of, if I'm recording my audio in Camtasia, maybe I get rid of my up breaths or any mouth noises or any ums or ahs, although I really try to avoid those.
Perfect. And while we're on the topic of audio, Brad just asked, if I have multiple audio clips on the same audio track, can those be leveled so that the volume levels are the same across all the tracks?
So if you bring in multiple pieces of audio, and they are different. So let's say you did a voiceover for me, Ryan, and I did a voiceover. If I'm using Camtasia 2019, one of the feature sets is actually inside the project settings, and I'm going to show it to you here really quick. Underneath the drop-down menu here at the top, underneath project settings, by default, there is a button checked that says Auto Normalize Loudness. This is using the LUF system, a standard across audio in the industry that actually does its best job, and it does a really good job, of automatically leveling pieces of media next to each other that have been brought into Camtasia 2019 to try and equal them out. Is it perfect? No. Is it pretty close? It really is. It's really pretty close. So much so that we have examples where people are speaking like I am, good microphone setup, nice distance, a regular voice person, and someone who might be a little bit more passive, a little quieter, different microphone setup. It equalizes them to the point where it at least sounds like they're speaking at the same volume, same distance from the mic. It does it automatically. You don't have to worry about it, but that is a feature set of Camtasia 2019.
Perfect. And Jason, I've got another Mac question for you. We got some Mac users asking how to extend frame in a Mac.
So I believe for Mac extending a frame, so it's inside of Windows, it is using Shift plus E. In the Mac, it should be Option key, and then you hover over the clip. You can then do it there, and so Option will bring contextual menu up, and you'll have the ability to do the extend frame from within the contextual menu. It should also be buried in the edit menu up here at the top. It should be available to you as long as you have a piece of media selected on the timeline and that piece of media was recorded inside of Camtasia.
Perfect. So Jason, earlier you showed us how to create like an intro, right? You made a custom intro, you added it to your library. So now I have it in my library. Dino and William want to know if they can be shared to others on their team.
Yep, they certainly can. That's actually a function of some of the new versions of Camtasia, and that is dealing with our library. And like I said before, if you're very interested in the library, one of the links Ryan will send out in the follow-up email is to that previous webinar we did in November. But the way you share media here is one of two ways. If it's inside of a library and you right-click on it, so like this intro that we just created, I can choose export asset, and then it sends it out as a libzip file, .libzip, or a library zip file. Then that file itself can be shared to other people that have Camtasia that supports the importing of library pieces. And then they simply open up Camtasia, use the drop-down menu here in the library, and underneath this manage library, there is a import zipped library option. They simply navigate to that .libzip file, and then Camtasia will ask them where they want to put it. Even better, you can take entire libraries you've created. Like for example, I've got one called tutorials and support videos. It's already got a series of cursors. It's also got a series of intros and outros. I can actually come in here and go to manage library, and I can export the entire library, that entire folder. This is great when working with teams because maybe one person has access to all the assets or has a connection, say in the marketing department for colorways and all that sort of thing. They can build a library inside of Camtasia then export that library and share it with their other teammates so that at least everyone is starting from the same starting point. Doesn't mean you can't modify the library yourself or add things or remove it or rename it based on your use case, but you can at least start with one shared library that's local to your computer. So when I say shared, it's not sitting in the cloud somewhere. It's a sharing of a library to other people so that they can utilize it on their machine.
Great. I got a question here for you from Gregory. He says, when using an extend frame, or really at any point, Jason, is there a way to make everything to the right, including other pieces of media, annotations, transitions? Can you make everything to the right move to the right at the same time?
So the way I would do that is a combination of two of the things I showed today. I would actually create a split. So at this point, maybe I want to extend a frame right here. What I would do, instead of having the playhead at the beginning of the timeline, I'd move it to where I want everything to be split. I would hold down my shift key, click and drag the playhead, which then moves everything to the right in sync. I would come back here to the piece of media and I'd move back one frame by using the comma button so that I did it too, but so that I'm right at that end piece of media. I right click. Let's say I want to extend the frame 6 seconds and I hit OK. And now what I've done is I've extended the frame at that point. I double click on the media once again over here, this one here. I click and drag with the shift button held back to the piece of media so that not only is the extend frame done like I asked it to do, but everything with the media stayed in sync to the right. So even though we created that little gap and brought it back together, it is not noticeable when you're playing the video back. You will not see some sort of hiccup. And mainly that's because there's no space between this piece of media and this one. When I dragged it back, I made sure they were hitting each other and touching so that the continuity of the video is intact. There's no black flash of frame of missing media.
Okay. I got a question here for you from Jim. And this is something I think we cover in the Getting Started webinar, but it wasn't really visible in today's webinar. And he wants to know, does the editor have an underlying visible frame that allows me to see what the video is going to look like so I can tell the difference between the frame and the background? So if you could just expose the canvas and let everybody see that.
Yep, so the canvas sitting here in the middle of the screen, I'm just going to zoom back here a little bit. I'm not zooming the video, I'm just zooming back by using my scroll wheel on my mouse. You can also make an adjustment up here based on the percentage of the video you want to see. You can fit it to the frame. You can do all sorts of things. But what you're saying is, can I tell what's the difference between what's going to be produced and what's not? The way I would do it is to show you, is to click on the media that's on the canvas itself, and I click and drag it out of the way. You'll see this black rectangle. So the black rectangle is the actual viewable part of the video, and the gray area around the outside is the canvas. That means anything that's outside of this viewable area would not be seen if the video was produced. So if I produce this video out right now, it would be very confusing and uninteresting because there would only be the content in this lower right-hand corner. So as long as I can see where the media is, there's a designation of light area versus grayed out area to be able to determine what part of the video is actually in the frame of the video. The way we have it here is so that you can have content on the outside. Like maybe I'm adding in a default little cursor here and I want to have it, thank you, and I want to animate it so that it slides in from here over to the side. I can kind of use this canvas area as a staging area. That's the basic design of it.
Okay, Jason, I know you love this question. We got a lot of people asking.
Okay.
What is your mic and headset, and what do you recommend for that kind of stuff?
Okay, so what do I recommend? Any recommendations I give are my personal ones. They are not recommendations of TechSmith per se. Bottom line is the best microphone and headset that you can get is the one you have available to you right now. To be honest, that should not be a reason that you stop or don't make a video. Use what you've got, and over time you can grow. That being said, as long as it's some sort of USB-based microphone, you really can't go wrong. My setup, I have my microphone is I think it's a 4-year-old Audio Technica AT2020 USB. It's tried and true. It's been really good to me. My headset is actually a recommendation from Andy and our video guys back at TechSmith. This is a Sony MDR 7506. It's kind of the, Andy, correct me when I'm wrong here because I'm going to be wrong. It's kind of the industry standard when it comes to audio and video editing. The biggest thing is it gives a very even sound stage. I love it for voiceover because I can really hear all the little noises and pops and sort of thing. Are they great for listening to music? Meh, they're okay, but they are a even keel headset for recording and doing editing. So the MDR 7506 from Sony, and then the Audio Technica AT2020 USB, but there are thousands of options available to you at various different price points. In fact, we actually have a blog post. If you go to techsmith.com, you can search for a microphone roundup that we did. We tested a whole series of them at various price levels just to see how different they sounded and what different use cases and applications they were best for.
Great. I know that wasn't exactly part of the Camtasia webinar, but we had a lot of questions and I wanted to answer.
Totally get it. No problem.
So Jason, we got about 5 minutes here and we still got to close out. So I'm going to try and get a couple questions to you pretty quickly.
Okay.
Jeremy wants to see how you add a piece of media to a device frame.
Well, actually, it's the reverse. You add a device frame to a piece of media. So that is a device frame is found over here in the visual effects tab. And what happens is a device frame is the ability to click and drag onto the canvas to show a piece of media. Let's zoom ourselves back out here. So what a device frame does, which we can see here, now it looks like my recording is on a desktop and I'll delete it by clicking it, closing it here from the properties drawer. A device frame just gives a different visual representation of where the video actually is taking place. So you go into your visual effects to device frame and click and drag it onto the screen. We actually send Camtasia out into the world with a whole series of device frames pre-installed. There's a drop-down menu over here on the right. We've got desktop, we've got an iPhone, which this isn't formatted right for it, but it looks pretty good. MacBook Pro, perhaps a Google Pixel. And then there's a whole series of free ones and a ton of paid ones. If you go to our TechSmith assets for Camtasia, it's an annual paid subscription where you can pick up, like here's a warehouse generic monitor, and it's actually an MP4. So as you play the video back, there's movement to the back of the frame. So it looks like someone's actually working back there. So it looks like what might happen in an actual space at the top of the screen. And that's my voiceover from earlier. So you add a device frame itself to a piece of media.
Perfect. And I think we'll get this one in here too, Jason.
All right.
Howard is wondering what you would use markers for. So Jason, maybe what your favorite use of markers is.
Yep, so the markers are actually located over here in the timeline underneath this drop-down menu. There's a marker tab, a marker timeline, and a quiz timeline. Markers allow you to literally click in the areas along the timeline where you can put in a little name or marker name for recommendations, or excuse me, for different editing points. What do I use them for? A couple reasons. One is like I might say, instead of marker 1, I might change this to say check facts, because maybe I spoke something here in the video and I needed to double check it before I send it out into the world. Now, the markers are also used for interactive hotspots where you actually can apply an interactive hotspot and have them click to a certain marker in the video. If you have markers and you produce the video out and it's hosted in different places, you can actually use the markers as titles for your tables of content. So actually a lot of uses for markers. And if you're interested in a video on the interactivity in Camtasia, let us know in the Q&A section, because maybe that's something we'll consider here in the future.
Okay, Jason, thank you for that. And thank you for the complete demo today. But that does wrap us up. If you felt like this was maybe a little more advanced than you were ready for, I encourage you to check out our Getting Started with Camtasia webinars. The next one's in 2 weeks, also on a Wednesday. And you can find all the times for that webinar and other webinars at techsmith.com/webinars. And again, that link will be provided for you in the follow-up email. Speaking of the follow-up email, this was recorded. I want to reiterate, you will be getting the recording, so you can go back and review anything Jason covered today. The email will also have things we mentioned throughout the presentation, from the TechSmith Academy to the asset store Jason just mentioned, other webinars like I mentioned, and tutorials that we think you would find helpful. Other than that, thank you again for being with us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.